When you get the call telling you that your app is down, where do you begin? Using structured logging with Seek, it's easy to find the most recent error, filter the log by trace or request ID, and see a trail of events leading up to the problem. Once you've found the root cause, use Seek's alerts and dashboards to proactively identify similar errors in the future. Seek gives you the visibility to confidently manage complex apps and services in production. Learn more and download at datalust.co/seek. That's SEQ. datalust.co/seek. Hi, I'm Scott Hansel, and this is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm chatting with cloud architect Mohammed Osman. He's calling us from Stockholm. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. How are you in the US?
We're a little bit warm. I think it's warm over there as well as the heat wave moves its way across the world. I'm checking out your blog at smartercode.io, and I understand that you even made a quiz at smartercode.io/Scott. That's the first time in 800 episodes that someone has come with a pre-made link with a quiz to see if you learn from the show. And I thought that was a very clever idea. So nicely done, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well deserved, Scott. I learned a lot from you actually since I was a student.
Well, now you've aged me, but that's very kind. At least you didn't say like from high school or from elementary school. Yeah. So you're a cloud architect and you work for full-time for a company, but smartercode.io is your own blog. And, you have free books and free certification guidelines and stuff. You're not selling anything. You're one of those people like me that just blogs for the love of it. Why do you have a blog, and why are you so generous on your blog?
Actually, there are a couple of reasons. I like teaching myself. I used to teach a lot, when I was in the university studying the bachelor degree. And then actually a very close friend of mine, we used to work at the same company. He suggested me that I should start writing because he read some of the documentations I have read. I have written before. Then I came up with this blog idea to start writing some things. At the beginning, I was focusing on the Azure Cognitive Services, and then I just made it more general with the message making your code smart and your career smarter. And actually, it gives a very satisfying feeling, to blog when you hear the feedback from the people. I got one of my friends to tell me that he used some of the techniques on the blog, like to set up the interviewing process in his company. So, I like that. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a call with a guy from Zimbabwe who used the certification guide to clear 7 Azure certifications. The funny thing, I don't have 7 Azure certifications, actually.
So he now has more certifications than you, and he used your certifications guide to be successful. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I was super happy with that. So you can make a global impact, actually, just when you look at the heat map from Google Analytics and then you see everyone is just getting something from you. That's a very satisfying feeling, actually.
That really is a satisfying feeling. And just as a note, my wife is from Zimbabwe, so whenever I hear Zimbabwe, I perk up immediately because I try to help folks in Zim as well. That's really cool. So when I started my blog, I was talking to myself basically for a year or two. I would look at Google Analytics and I would see 7 people view this article, 5 people this article, 10 people this article. Did you see immediate success, or did you ever feel like you were just talking to yourself?
Frankly speaking, I got that feeling as well. So I had I used to, push it in the social media, promote it myself in Facebook, in Twitter. But it's until I think it's by pure chance, one of my articles just loved Google SEO and it got ranked in the first Google page. I used to see lots of traction, lots of traffic. And then, with the certification guide that I released, I think 7 months ago, some sort of word of mouth effect also happened. And then right now I have around 200 to 300 visitors a day. Not that much, but I think it's a decent amount.
I think it is a decent amount. And I think that's an important thing for our listeners to think about. And I think it's great that you think about it as well, that's a huge number. Like the average person doesn't talk to 100 people a day or 200 people a day. And once you've written the article, like you can go to sleep and the people are still getting your knowledge even while you sleep. Anything more than one additional reader is a good number because you're changing lives.
Yeah, exactly. You are just taking leverage on this. So
Yeah, you're leveraging that knowledge that you've got from from all over and bringing it together. I'm curious, how did you set up your schedule? Like I usually blog Tuesdays and Thursdays, but for the first time in 20 years, I've slowed down and I haven't blogged yet this year because I just got tired. It's a marathon, and I finally kind of at 20 years I kind of stumbled and I haven't started up again.
I used to blog like weekly because I heard previously that Google likes consistency. But then actually that happened to be on the expense of the quality. I feel that I'm not really polishing my articles. So I slowed down, like I think, for bi-weekly schedule. But right now, yeah, I'm struggling also with releasing content frequently. I think this year I only released 3 blog posts and updated 1 blog. And also, like a side benefit I got from the blog, I got some side writing gigs. So sometimes I do other writings for other websites.
Okay, that's good. So this has been a benefit for you, whether you blog twice a week or just once a month. People notice these things, whether it's 200 people or whether it's a publisher who might reach out.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Actually, my current job, the hiring manager read the blog article and then he spoke with one of the guys in the company, asking whether he knows me or not. And during the interview process, I noted that she was more in the mode that just she wants to hire me. It was just an informal meeting. So there is also as well like other side and branding benefits you get out of doing those type of things.
So do you think that everyone should blog who's in tech?
Definitely. The least benefit you get is that you are forced to organize your mind. Albert Einstein says that if you cannot explain it to a 6 years child, then you don't understand it yourself. And then when you want to plug and explain a technology, actually you need to frame your mindset and your ground to meet the people where they are, right? To explain things in the right terms, to make things as simple as possible. And this will force you to understand things really well.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's true. I think I've never known more about a topic than when I taught the topic. And having to, like you say, organize your thoughts is super important. So the skill that you make by being a technical writer, the skills that you develop will end up making you a better architect and a better coder. Really, whether people read it or not, just getting it out is important.
Yeah, it's really nice. Actually, Steve Smith, he has a very nice slogan in his blog is to teach is to learn twice. I think it's a Chinese proverb, and I really like that one. It's on spot for me.
That's great. To teach is to learn twice. The other thing that I think is helpful about it is not just the writing the blog, but the hosting of it, the SEO of the blog, the marketing of the blog, the researching the content, making it look nice, optimizing it. This is all skills that I would not have if I hadn't started a blog.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, working with the DNS, CNAME records, and so on, as a guy from a development background, I didn't used to understand that. But when I set up my blog, and then I need to understand a little bit about Cloudflare, how can I set up like a subdomain? I learned a lot about infrastructure things, aside from the things that are more related on the marketing side. Yeah, SEO and so.
Well, and then also SSL certificates, rotation, like you mentioned, CNAMEs, also canonicalization of URLs. Like if you visit www.smartercode.io, or if you just visit smartercode.io without the www, on your blog, you canonicalize it. So you actually redirect the user to www. And I do the similar thing on my blog so that Google sees one website and doesn't get confused, which then helps your SEO. So those little details, you learn a lot when you do them yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Even like naming the URL correctly, to have. I see many blogs, they have the date in the URL. And I used to do the same thing until I learned that this is not good for SEO. You need to give it like a readable name. So all these details you only understand when you start blogging, actually.
Mm-hmm. Hey friends, I want to take a second and thank our sponsor, Zencastr. You know that I've been doing Hansel Minutes now for over 850 episodes, and in the old days I would have a guest manually install Audacity and they would FTP their WAV file to me, and it was a mess. But for the last several hundred episodes I've been using Zencastr. It's an all-in-one podcast production suite. It runs entirely in the browser. It's got now video, HD video. It's got built-in voice chat. I do footnotes. I've got a soundboard for live editing. It's absolutely brilliant. And it also uploads to my cloud. The guest shows up, they go to a URL, they record, and the next thing you know, in my Dropbox or my cloud storage, a file appears. It's absolutely brilliant. And they've even now got automatic transcripts. And they are now sponsoring this show. And you can go to Zencastr, ZENCASTR.com/pricing and use my code HanselMinutes. And you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experience that I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story with Zencastr. So as a cloud architect, are you like I am, or you host it in the cloud, or where do you host your blog? Because for a long time, I hosted my blog on a physical server, even though I was talking about the cloud. So I felt a little bad about that.
I am hosted in DreamHost. They provide a blog like a PaaS service. I don't know if they are using a cloud provider behind the scenes, or maybe they are, having their own infrastructure. Actually, the thing is that I didn't want to spend much time on managing the technicalities of the blog. But actually, your talk in NDC Porto made me to rethink that decision, because I thought, actually, it could be a very good experimentation lab.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I understand where you're coming from, because sometimes you just want blog as a service.
Yeah.
Right. The analogy I used at my talk at NDC Porto, thanks for watching that, is the one about driving a car. Like sometimes you want an Uber, and sometimes you want to build the car from scratch in your garage. But when you really have to go somewhere, if you go into the garage and your car is broken and opened up and the guts are everywhere, I have to go somewhere right now. So experimenting on your own blog while simultaneously trying to run a blog and have people read it is a challenge. You could break everything and then your blog would be down.
Yeah, exactly. But I've seen that like you introduced many interesting technologies in that blog. I know them on a high level. If I were having a blog in a similar setup to yours, I would have learned them in more details, actually.
So you're just using WordPress right now. Do you recommend WordPress for anyone who's listening as just a good place to start with a blog? Or should you write your own blog from scratch and code it yourself?
I would say that depends on your objective. So if your objective is, to use it as experimentation platform and so on, similar to Hanselman Minutes, I would say that's definitely the direction. And this is something I'm considering right now, actually. The good thing about WordPress, and this is how one of my friends convinced me, that they have a very good plugin ecosystem. So if you are thinking of expanding your blog to a business, WordPress is the way to go. And I think also there are, the headless sites like Gatsby and those ones. They have a very impressive performance because they are using the static site generators. But the problem I have seen, like many people complained about, that they are not very good with SEO, and you don't have as rich plugin ecosystem as in WordPress.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I believe also that if I could start my blog again from scratch today, I would probably use a static site generator. But then the plugins, to your point, run statically up front, or they're iframes, and they are running in JavaScript on the front end. So like comments are more challenging sometimes with a static site generator because you have to outsource your comments, and those can cause some SEO challenges. So the way that I've solved it is by caching my entire blog database in memory. So I have the performance of a static site, even though the site's still dynamic. And that's run by Mark Downey, who is the gentleman who ported DOS Blog over to DOS Blog Core. So that's called DAS Blog Core for anyone who's listening and wants to check out that technology.
Okay, very interesting. I think it's an open source project.
Yeah, DOS Blog came out in 2001, 2002. And then I was running on .NET Framework for a very long time. And then Mark Downey came around and upgraded it to .NET Core, which was challenging because it ran on web forms. But then he upgraded it to Razor Pages. And it's the same blog that I've been running for 17, 18 years now. And now it's moved into a container in the cloud. but we're always tinkering. He's always making changes, and I'll participate, and he and I will pair. So I go back and forth between breaking the blog and feeling bad because it's broken and down for a day. But then I also really enjoy the fixing and the tinkering. So it is a challenge. I almost need like the two blogs, one I can break and then one that I can just keep up all the time, like a WordPress instance.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, I'll try to instantiate an instance of that project and see how it goes.
Yeah, that's good fun. So you're working as a cloud architect, and you're working out of Stockholm. And I'm curious, were you around when the cloud kind of came up, and how do you see the cloud changing the way that you write code versus when you were just hosting in an on-prem server?
I started working with cloud around 2016, 2017. So yeah, it's a little bit in the mid of the cloud, but the organization I joined, they started the cloud transformation journey just 3 years ago. So I have seen the actual journey when you go from on-prem to cloud native, or shift and lift in some scenarios. And there are multiple differences, I would say. One of the things that we needed to care about is that when we needed to migrate some of our applications to the app service plans, the PaaS service offering from Azure, we needed to make sure that all our SDKs and frameworks are upgraded to the right version, because there is a specific supported version at Microsoft when you use those PaaS services. So yeah, like you cannot use .NET 1, something like that. So that's one of the first things we needed to consider, making sure that we are in the right framework version. And then also regarding the resource usage. So if your application is eating a lot of resources and memory, one lesson that we learned: we should not fix the problem by throwing more money, which is scaling up the cloud resources, but rather looking at the code and optimizing the code performance. And yeah, we did a couple of optimizations actually to reduce our resource usage. And I remember that the lessons you learn from algorithms and data structures, they help quite a lot. Lots of people, they get annoyed with those coding interviews and so on, but there are some instances actually this knowledge can become valuable to help you reduce your memory usage or reduce the CPU usage.
Doesn't it make you feel sometimes when you're on a blog, like a random website, you can almost feel like you're in someone's for loop? You're like, oh, like why is this slow? I spent 5 seconds waiting for this. I'm in somebody's for loop right now. Whatever they're doing, they're not using a hash table. They're just spinning, and I can feel it. And I want to see the code, and I want to help them optimize,
You feel it a lot, especially if you are working with PHP things.
No disrespect to our PHP friends, but yes, definitely there can be challenges there. So how is the cloud and the knowledge of the cloud, the awareness that your application is running on a PaaS, on a platform as a service, how does that change how you would write code?
I mean, I would definitely, one of the first things I will reconsider is if I'm writing a code that does lots of boilerplate things, for example, running some orchestrations. I am waiting some request on an API endpoint in order to save something in the database, and then I send an SMS. Rather than doing that workflow in the code, you might have a bug over there and over here. You can just use ready-made services like Logic App. So Logic App is a Microsoft PaaS service that enables you to perform lots of actions based on some triggers and conditions, and then feeding the data and the response to other resources. And it's a literally drag and drop resource. You just drag and drop different things, you connect them together based on your logic workflow, and then you are pretty much up and running.
That is a really good reminder that even 10 or 15 years ago, when we were doing things with like DOS Blog, we were thinking about background services. Like, we're a web app. We serve web pages, but then we send emails, and we would notify people of a comment on a thread. And we would find that background service, that is that background thread that's sending those emails or doing background processing. Even we had a background thread that would zip up log files. Those threads aren't serving web pages. So we had to think about what you just described, which is separation of concerns and separation of responsibilities. Today, now that things like Logic Apps exist, you can have a sidecar container or an Azure function. These are all opportunities for you to get the other work, the non web page serving work out of the website and do the work elsewhere. Is that what you're advocating for?
Exactly, exactly. And actually, you get many things out of the box. Like you get monitoring. You don't need to write any custom logic to monitor your application. That's provided from the Azure portal. Yeah, so there is also a similar service on the data side called Azure Data Factory. It does pretty much the same thing, but it's very good with integrating with data sources.
Yeah. One of the things that I worry about a little bit is that we have all these services. First, we have to be aware of them, all these different cloud services that can do work for us. So knowing is half the battle, as we say.
Yeah.
But then also, if I use those services, how important is it for me to know exactly how they work inside? Or should I just use them with confidence and not worry about the internal details?
I would say in the majority of the cases, I tend to use them as they are. But it can happen actually that you hit a limitation, and that happened to us with one of the logic apps. We used to have a system that's integrating with a file share that's hosted on prem. We wanted to modernize that, to move the file share to Azure storage account with file share, and we just assumed that would work fine with the logic app. We didn't even research that. Only when we went there, we find out that Microsoft actually does not support integrating from Logic App to a file share in Microsoft storage account. And so many folks in the internet are not happy with that. I mean, you can think about this like, working with MATLAB and assembly. When you go to those, black boxes based products like Azure Logic Apps and Azure Data Factory, it's true, they make your life easier, but you lose control. And that's what happens with MATLAB. Like if you ever use MATLAB, it's very easy to use and you can do lots of things in black boxes, but you don't have that much control. While if you do things in assembly, you can even control, on the computer register level, the things on the computer register level. But then you need to take all that headache with you. And then this is where the architect job is, right? You need to find the right balance when you can use the right tool. Should I use a complex, powerful tool in this scenario, or should I use a simple tool? And that's what you need to learn and practice as an architect.
Yeah, that is the challenge. And then for the next generation of folks who might be starting today, what should they know? Should they simply know about the product and its limitations? And then how would they go and learn about the history, about like why did Logic Apps, as an example, why did it need to exist? Why does Azure Functions exist? Why does Functions as a Service exist? But at the same time, you might want a lot of control. It's not really my job to go and write that stuff from scratch if I'm working at a healthcare company. Like we're trying to do healthcare. I'm not trying to invent a new cloud concept. So that not invented here feeling is always kind of weird. Now, you've also done a lot of work with cognitive services as well. You've called into this different AI services.
Yeah.
What have you used those for?
I mainly used a service called Azure Forms Recognizer. And this service works by sending some form in an image or a PDF, a form that has some specific fields. A common one is an invoice where you have, the amount, the date, the currency, and so on. And I am using them in an accounting system. Like in my private company, I have an accounting system. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I have some expenses that I am too lazy just to enter manually. So I pass them to the Azure Forms Recognizer. And then there is an API from the accounting system. I just then post it over there.
There's an Azure Forms Recognizer? We have a thing to recognize forms with AI now.
Yes.
Why am I filling out my expense reports manually? I think is the question I want to ask them.
And it's very reliable, actually.
That's amazing.
And even if it doesn't recognize your form automatically, you can train it so you can upload multiple forms and then you can choose the fields with mouse and then tag them. And then you can just use it later on.
See, that almost feels like there's another skill that people need to develop, which is knowing to go and look for a service. Like I wouldn't even have thought to look for a form recognizer, but now you're describing it and I'm like, of course that already exists. That, I need to teach people to go and check. There's probably an Azure or a cloud service that already exists for the problem that you have.
Yeah, exactly. And this reminds me, Donald Rumsfeld statement when he said that you don't know what you don't know.
That is exactly right. You absolutely don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Now, on your blog, smartercode.io, you also have a bunch of information around Microsoft Azure certifications, practice sites, basically a whole resource available to let people know that they can get certified, just like you mentioned our Zimbabwean friend who
Yeah.
recently became certified as well. How important do you think certifications are? Because a lot of people say go to a boot camp, and other people say go to university. Where do you think certifications fit into that ecosystem?
I think the certifications are a very good option after you got some experience with the technology. Unfortunately, I see some folks, they just read some exam dumps and then they go to the certification to clear it. They don't have the actual hands-on experience with the technology. And that doesn't really help that much. And actually, any smart hiring manager will be able to read that between the lines. Where certifications add value is number one is they will help you to validate your skill and give you some confidence. So if you clear, for example, is it 204, you pretty much know everything that's at your hand as a developer. Like not necessarily, you will know the ins and outs of Service Bus and Event Hub, but you will know if I have a challenge that requires asynchronous processing, those services exist. I can do further readings on that. And the same goes on the other certification. So actually, they help you with this part that you mentioned, knowing what services are over there. Yeah, you will need to keep up with the certifications as Microsoft now they expire them yearly rather than every 2 years. And this indicates how fast the cloud ecosystem is actually changing.
So, do you think you just said that you think that people can they take these exams and just teach themselves to the test, and they wouldn't actually know the thing? They could pass the exam but not really know the stuff.
Yes, that's correct.
Ew, that's not good. I wonder if I should try to take this test. How many certifications are there that I should take for Azure?
That's a very good question because there are certifications on things related to ACB and so on.
Yeah, it goes on and on. I'm looking here and I just clicked Azure and I can see like 80 or so, but I don't think I need to take 80 certifications. AZ204 was the one that you mentioned, which is developing solutions
Yeah,
for
exactly.
Azure. That sounds like that's the most popular one to start with.
There is AZ900, the Microsoft Azure Fundamentals, and that's for the people who are totally white on Microsoft Azure.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on which track you want to take in Microsoft Azure, if you are a data scientist, then you want to look at something. I think it's called DB203. I'm not quite sure actually. And then yeah, if you are a data engineer, there is another one. If you are a solution architect, security professional, networking
I
professional.
see. So it's role based and it's path based. And have
Yeah.
you found now you're in Stockholm? Do you find that people in the Europe, in Middle East, Asia, and Africa, do they look at certifications and they see that they want to see that on your resume on your CV?
I would say, depending on the market, there is no strong emphasis in the Swedish market at least. But knowing from friends I know in Dubai and in the Middle East market, at least, there is a high emphasis on certifications, even the academic certifications, not only the professional ones.
Yeah, I've always felt that certifications can't hurt. I actually wrote some Visual Basic certifications. There was the MCSD VB6 test and a bunch of certifications that I wrote in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, I've never felt that it was a replacement for a real experience, but it certainly can't hurt to have a certification. So if you can afford it and you can pass the test, it's definitely a good idea, don't you think?
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It might be useful for the listeners to know that Microsoft offers free certifications through the Ignite Skills Challenge. So if you just wait for that and find when they announce those challenges, Microsoft will ask you just to clear some baths in Microsoft Learn, and then they can give you some certifications, and you can just take it for free.
Very cool. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, thought it was very clever. You made a custom website for us at smartercode.io/Scott.
Yeah.
So the only people who will know about this URL are the people who are listening to us right now. And there's a little quiz with some Azure and some cloud questions, and then at the end you can get those free Azure certifications blueprint that you put together. And you did this for free. You're not selling us anything.
Yeah. Actually, at the end, you will get, how to say it, you will get like a small write up helping you with the answers. And the questions are more focused on what cloud changed in your code. and you will find some guides and resources on, to scale up your knowledge in the areas the question asking.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with me today, Mohammed. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Scott, for hosting me.
We've been chatting with Mohammed Osman. He's an Azure architect, and you can check out his blog at smartercode.io and his little quiz at smartercode.io/Scott. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.